Well, hey guys, welcome back or to the Grey Couch, where we say that life and marriage is not black or white, but many shades of grey, and we get to explore those different shades together so we become better individuals and subsequently better marriages, hopefully. I'm Stanley.
And I'm Osito.
And we are still talking about communication. Last week we talked about emotional labor. If you didn't see it, check it out. However, this week we want to push on and begin to talk about why we have to work so darn hard on our marriages. There's that labor thing again, right? Okay. So not saying that marriage is hard, but really it's the commitment involved in maintaining these thriving relationships that, let's face it, it can sometimes be really hard. Now, we have a newsletter, and if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe below. But we brought up the concept of ambivalence in long-term relationships.
So, who among us hasn't wondered why or what on earth did I get married for? Let's leave the question of who on earth did we get married to later on in the conversation.
So this is not to discourage you. I promise. It's not to discourage you. But you know how they say that disappointment is really unmet expectations.
Yep.
Well, let's think of this as a way to reset some of those lofty expectations to kind of curb down disappointment downstream. Curb disappointment down that might become downstreams. All we want for you, I promise you, is divine appointments and not disappointments. So let's set the stage, right? In society today, we hear a lot of talk about marriage being about self-fulfillment, self-actualization. You will hear people saying he or she fulfills me, or something that sociologists talk about me marriage or commercial marriage
or consumer marriage.
And that thing of commercial marriage, I like to think of it as, it's transactional. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? What am I going to gain?
Even without the person saying it, right? Like that's the unconscious motivation that you use to enter into the marriage.
And let me just come out and confess to say I was one of those people that thought that way. This is the Grey Couch right here, to be honest, right? I mean, I always saw marriage as the next step in the success ladder. And what's that ladder I'm talking about? You managed to get into college. You finished from college with honors. You got a job. And then you got another job, aka a wife, and you got married. I'm not sure which job came first. The wife might be more work than the other one. But, and then you have kids, you live happily ever after. And I didn't think of what kind of commitments and or sacrifices will be needed to make such a marriage successful. And in hindsight, it's a little bit ironic, thinking that the whole concept of marriage is really about a long-term commitment, but yet I didn't think about thinking of the cost, what was required, what would be required. I was like, let's just enter this thing, and continue with it.
So what's the work, right? So Stan is talking about something that psychologists call metacognition. You're thinking about your thinking, right? You're just thinking about the wedding and how wonderful and amazing it will be to get married, but you're not thinking about the marriage, which is actually the work. And so the idea of the work has to do with this concept of mastery, right?
So what is this work that we're talking about? Well, it's work, right? But this is not that work of domestication and emasculation that men normally use as a defense when women are like, oh, why don't you do this? Why does that? You can't domesticate me, you can't put me in a box, as it were. But really, this is really the work of really self-mastery. And this mastery of self is really the self that marriage exposes. It's an expose. Yes, so there's nothing like marriage to expose somebody, both physically and spiritually.
Every day.
On a continual basis.
Yeah. Okay.
This reminds me of when we were in college. Typically the way people hooked up, or not, I shouldn't say hooked up, met your spouse. You say like, I received a word, and that word is meant to say, I received a word from the Lord. How many of you can remember that? I can remember that. Where the Lord told me I was going to marry you, you are going to be my wife.
You know, I wonder why it's always the men that the Lord told. Because if I remember in the Bible, when you talk about Isaac and Rebecca, right, and the story of fetching water, both parties were given a good word from the Lord's messenger, right? But I digress.
Anyways, I wonder now in my prime middle age, if, you know, in all seriousness, if that could be an unconscious reason why myself as a Christ follower, and other Christ followers, we tend to think that, you know, there was no need to gain any mastery, or that marriage was going to be easy. And this is just me being honest. And we're now watching the women transcending, and we're wondering, what exactly is going on? We're being left behind, you know, simply because the Lord told you so, and you expected that, or since the Lord told you, it was going to be easy peasy, and it wouldn't be so hard.
Yeah. It's interesting again when you say that, because I think about the children of God in the Bible who are given a clear word that they'll be going into the promised land, right? This idea. But you know, look at how many years it took them. Yeah, a lot of years. So they had to walk, right, and work to enter into the fullness of that promise, really. Right? They were not transported or teleported or whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, I say this to say, I honestly believe that if the Lord gave you the word, then you need to do the work to tend and to fend. Those two things, tending and fending. Tend to the wife that God told you you're going to marry, and fend off any external distractions or suppers from the home, or suppers of the home from outside, right? Outside means many things here now. Through prayer and a continual mastery of self. What do you think?
You know, I'll be honest with you, that's saying something. That's some heavy words, you know. I'm a little bit speechless. But yeah, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point, because a lot of times the idea that God has given you a promise, you think that, it's assured, but there are some promises that you need to do your work, you know, to catch up. So I mean, it's a different spin on things. It's a more difficult spin.
Otherwise, you'll be engaging in magical thinking, and God does not do magical thinking. It's not magic. Okay. This idea that because I think something, then it should just like magically happen, right? But I think
another recipe for disappointment, though.
Of what?
Magical thinking. Because you now get disillusioned with yourself, get disillusioned with God for not bringing it to pass the way you thought it would be.
But we started out saying, you know, the work involved in marriage can be hard. But we want to turn back and say marriage is not hard, right? And that is not like, you know, just motivational speech. It can be easy like Sunday morning if you know how to tend and fend as the seasons come and go, because there will be different seasons, just as with life, right? And with farming. And so, you know, if you think about the work of change and the work of becoming of the two people involved in the marriage, there are certain things we want to say now.
Yeah, it is a journey, and you can hear me sigh, but it is a journey, you know. And you know, there are three things that I just want to share with you and put out there that I normally try and remember in my journey, and they've been quite helpful to me to try to reframe my mindset along this marriage walk. I'm trying to make it easy. The first being, no other person can complete or fulfill you. It's an individual journey with individual battles and successes. The person can support you, the person can be your helpmate. And remember, part of tending is just ensuring that you're working on your own issues, you know, and not just throwing it on the other person, especially it's the other person's fault. Thirdly is the fact that marriage changes all of us. And this is very interesting, you know, in that you don't know how marriage is going to change you to the other side. Well, till you get to the other side, as in you go through the challenges, the ups and downs. And being in a marriage ceremony is a very, very, it's like, well, it's not like, it is the most intimate of relationship with another person. And so the person sees you, flaws, freckles, and all, you know. And so you don't know, the person that you married is not the person you're going to grow old with. And so if you're saying, oh, I married this perfect person, you married the wrong person.
Remember what we said at the beginning, that sometimes ambivalence will have you thinking, who on earth did I get married to? Not even just what or why, but who's this person, right? Like they really change. And so, you know, the idea that we learned from kind of one of Tim Keller's books was the fact that marriage is really about finding a way to continually fall in love with a stranger you find yourself with, as both of you change with the seasons, right? And so this is one place where I feel like people get caught up or stuck, or I don't want to say stuck, but caught up in the sense that, oh, you've really changed. Yes, I've really changed. Yes, he has really changed. Because we're meant to change. We're not meant to stay the same, right? As humans, who are continually, I don't want to say striving, but who are continually growing into the fullness and the knowledge of, Christ, for those who are Christ followers, or people who are, coming into self, actualization and transcendence. You cannot be the same person, right? The person you were when you started that journey cannot be the person you are today. And so I always think about this idea, like, if you are going to work, right, you're making money, and from that job you stay there 40 years and you do what you have to do, what makes you then think that you don't have to put any effort into a relationship that all things being equal would outlast your official working years? I think this is kind of like a fallacy, that we sometimes all have, of that, oh, I don't have to not put in any work, but it's unconscious, right? It's just an unconscious thing that some people have of, why should it be so hard? And we're not just saying this, right? He heard Stan say it himself. I've heard it from some of my male friends who are like, it shouldn't be that hard. And I keep first of all, I laugh in Swahili a lot, right? I'm like, no one is saying it should be hard, but the idea of thinking that you're not going to
put in any effort, or even when you say put in any effort, someone can get defensive and say it's not true, I put in effort. So I would say put in minimal efforts. If you have children, you understand what I mean by minimal efforts. The effort of, well, you asked me to check the box, I've checked the box, what else do you need, right? So this thing, that's why we talk about mastery of self. Like, it's about I don't have to tell you that whole idea of what you think I'm saying I need, but is the tending and the fending, right? Not true or false, T and F, tend and fend. And just think about that, right? As the seasons, and if you think about seasons of life, or even seasons of weather, how you tend in the winter is not how you tend in the summer, right? And all of that. So just have that at the back of your mind as you continue to, work on your relationships. And work on yourself. Sure. Work on yourself, work on your relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
the relationship in many cases should make you be working on yourself. That's the idea. It's a reciprocal thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a yin and yang.
Yin and
as
yang.
in one helps you work on the other and helps you work on the other.
And then when you work on yourself, you kind of see the relationship getting better because your perceptions and everything might be changing as you go along. So yeah.
Well, that's what we have for you for this week. And we just want to remind you that we have a newsletter that comes out every Monday. Send an email to us here, and we have a webinar that we're excited about, August 17th, on neurodivergence. Sign up here. We'd love to see you there. And if this was a blessing, interesting, or if you have comments, share with one person. Let's start the conversation.
And Stan does not know how to push an ad. When we're talking about neurodivergence, it's talking about the idea of, could this be why some people are not able to tend and fend as fully as they should be, or as you expect them to be? Is that something that actually kind of limits a person, right? Like inhibits a person from being the fullness of who they should be. If you join us, we'll find out. We'll tease it out. Yeah.
So from our couch to yours.
It's
bye.